Our theme for today is always about offering a hand up, but today what's special is we're trying to talk about growing that help. How do you grow people out of poverty? And so as a little gift, our staff had the idea of giving you little plants. And this can stick onto a window or refrigerator, and it's just that reminder. We hope you'll think about helping people in your community grow as well. But what I want to share with you is the idea that often we're unsure about how to help people grow. So how do you help somebody who's a refugee in a foreign country? How do you effectively help them? How do you help someone in another state whose family's been impacted by a hurricane? How do you help even someone in our own community that's the bottom of the off-ramp? I'm often unsure of how to help these folks myself. People ask all the time, what are we supposed to do in these situations? And I'm unsure as well. Some of you may know that 3 years ago this month, my daughter had her second surgery to remove a brain tumor. And it was an incredibly scary time. But by the grace of God and two very gifted surgeons, she's healthy and happy, and we are so blessed. What we went through in that, thank you. So what we went through in that time was a time when our family was unsure of how to help us. So, they were asking us questions, how can we best help? And I will tell you that all they needed to do was show up. Their presence was helpful. And it was unbelievably helpful, more than you can ever imagine. But while we were blessed in our situation, not everybody who goes through situations like that is as blessed. Raina's son was diagnosed with the same tumor, and unfortunately the results were not as positive, and her son passed. And it's horrible and it's unimaginable, and I still to this day don't know quite what to say to Raina or her family other than I'm sorry for your loss, and those words feel empty because no one can really experience what it feels like to lose a child unless you've lost a child. But I'm also unsure of how to help in these types of situations. See, when Raina's family lost their son, they went into somewhat of a tailspin. Of course, there's sadness, but sadness led to anxiety, anxiety to depression, depression to unemployment, unemployment to divorce, and divorce to chaos. And it's hard to recover from these types of dramatic events. As it turned out, Raina and I not only shared the same diagnosis with our children, but we also shared some of the same doctors, but did not know each other. And one of those doctors is a volunteer with one of our nonprofit partners and was able to connect the two of us in the hopes that our organization might be able to help Raina. So Raina came over from Polk County. She visited with our staff. We entered her into our program. We got her using our grocery program. We enrolled her in our STEP program. But Raina's story today and her family is not a success story that we're sharing with you, at least not yet. The reason I wanted to share Raina's story is because it represents so many other people. The video was dramatized, clearly. We set this up. But we do this because of what Dr. King always says, that you have to dramatize the plight of the poor in order to get people to stand up and take notice. And so we try to do that as best we can. And Raina and her daughter Lolo in the video was willing to do that for us. But what you don't know is that Raina has experienced everything in that video in real life. And that's how we created the video, to reproduce some of these things in her life. And we picked the items in that video because it happens to so many people. But they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to express the indignity of some of these situations, so they cover it. They cover it as best they can, like we all would for our children, to protect them from things that aren't so positive. We cover it up as best we can. We had a number of studies that are done about poverty all around the community. I could share with you lots of numbers, but let me just share that last month, the most recent statistics about poverty were released, and the poverty rate in our community is 15.1%. And what that means is, in the Orlando metropolitan area, which the federal government defines as Orange, Seminole, and Osceola County, for where there's about 2.5 million people, that means there are 377,000 people living in some of the most backbreaking, impoverished conditions you can imagine. 377,000. And it's hard to wrap your mind around these numbers, and some of you have heard me talk about examples of how to wrap your mind around these numbers, and I'm constantly struggling to give you that as long as a football field type of example. So if you bear with me, I'm going to try another one today in the hopes that you may express this to other people. A lot of times, we look at folks who are in poverty with our own kind of glasses on. We don't really think about it. and that's the point. But we think in the back of our minds that a lot of times people that are living in poverty are looking for a handout. And even if we're consciously thinking about it, we're honestly probably thinking of somebody that's standing at a stoplight, shaking a can, asking for help. And what I want to express to you is that not everybody who's struggling with poverty or homelessness in this community is looking for handouts. They're looking for dignity. They're looking for that hand up. Because if everybody in this community was standing at one of those stoplights, and there are about 1,000 stoplights in Orange, Seminole, and Osceola County, you'd have 100 families at every stoplight in the entire community. And that's the visual that I hope you leave with today, that 377,000 people is a lot of people in this community. But we have a hard time picturing what this means a lot of times. So we had a group of PhD students who were visiting our campus from the university that was doing a study about homelessness. And the students were trying to talk to people about their experience being homeless. And I went and checked in with them about halfway through the day, and they said, we're really having trouble finding anybody to talk to us. So I talked to them a little bit about what they were doing, and I asked them, what are you looking for? They're like, we're looking for people who look homeless. And I said, what does that mean? But we all kind of think about this. This is kind of ingrained in our culture. We have phrases like, you look like a bum. That's just the mindset. So what I told the students was, when you come back from lunch, I want you to look for people who are very well dressed. Women in suits, men in uniforms, and just talk to those people. And at the end of the day, when I checked back in with them to see how they were doing, they only had one question for me. And that was, how did you know? And I said, I know because I know people are covering. Because our visual of the people who need help are the people that we see, not the people that we don't see. And because we don't see it, we don't act. There are hundreds of reasons why there's a poverty problem in this country and in this community. And if you have an extra 4 or 5 hours to invite me over for coffee, I'll share a lot of them with you. But let me just share 3 with you. There's no particular importance to these, but I always want people to go home and share with other people. So I'm hoping that some of these statistics, at least one, might be something you share with others, because we really cannot advance the fight against poverty unless we're talking about it more. So here's just 3 examples. It might be difficult to find a way to make ends meet when you have an infant at home and you're putting them through full-time childcare, and the cost of that childcare in this state is the equivalent of the cost to put somebody through 1 year of college and their tuition at a 4-year state college in this country. Or it might be difficult for you to make decisions about whether or not you stay home with an illness or go to work, because the United States is the only developed country in the world to not have mandatory paid sick leave. And regardless of your politics or how you feel about that, it's a reality. It just is. And there are millions of people who have to make these decisions, and then it ends up affecting all of us. You also might find it difficult to make ends meet, especially in a 2-income household, when 2 million Americans will be sleeping tonight behind bars. That's a five-fold increase in my lifetime. Why is that happening? I don't know, but I know it's impactful. There are more people in prison today as a percentage of the population of this country than any other country at any other time on this planet in the history of the world. Why is that happening? I don't know, but I know that it impacts lots of other issues. I know for the people that we see, it's a major issue in the fight against poverty. There are a lot of things that need to be dispelled before we can actually start having reasonable conversations about solutions. You kind of have to clear the path in order to make room for reasonable solutions in the future. So I'm going to just share with you 2 things that I think we need to as a community, just kind of move past. One of them is we really need to stop using the Bible as a reason not to help people that are poor. And the reason I say this, it might be a little odd to hear, but the reason I say this is I go out and give a lot of talks. And the most common phrase quoted back to me is a passage from John 12. And if you don't know this story, and I'm not a pastor, I'm not going to do very well with this, so please bear with me. But if you don't know this story, it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. You see, Jesus at the end of his ministry was visiting his very good friends, Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. And at one point with his disciples and the friends in the house, Mary gets up, she goes and gets a jar of perfume. She then takes it, pours it over Jesus' feet, washes his feet with her hair in an incredible symbolic gesture of reverence. And then the response from one of the disciples, Judas, is, why did you do that? Why didn't we just sell that jar of perfume worth a year's wages and give the money to the poor? And Jesus' very famous reply is, Judas, the poor will always be with us. And I hear that phrase repeated back to me over and over again. I'll be honest with you, I use that phrase. When we talk about setting our own goals as an organization, even I said that phrase because that's something that we just kind of built into our heads after years and years of Sunday school. But surely, Jesus Christ didn't mean to say, yeah, Judas, the poor will always be with us. There's really nothing you need to do about it. Clearly, that's not what he intended. And clearly, I'm not smart enough to interpret this, so I ask a lot of other people who I know are much smarter than this than I, and I actually got multiple pastors to send me their sermons. Clearly, I'm not the only one who struggled with this. And the basic common thread through the interpretation here is that the story is much more about the gesture that Mary presented to Jesus days before his crucifixion. But the passage, the quote, the poor will always be with you, it's important in that it's a direct reference to an Old Testament passage where God says, the poor will always be with you, and this is a wonderful opportunity for you to give. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to show your humanity. This is an opportunity for us. So we need to dispel that myth. And those of you who are not, some of you are thinking, yeah, I've said that, and others of you thinking, no, nobody says that. Just trust me when I tell you, hundreds of times in the last 3 years, people have said to me, I hear what you're saying, but you know what they say, Eric? The poor will always be with us. I don't believe that the intent here is that we should eliminate poverty. The idea here is that we need to lift the standard of living in our community. Surely we can do better as a standard of living than first century Christians in the Bible. What I want us to ask is, what is the standard of living you want for your grandchildren in the 22nd century? And what kind of standard do we need to lift everybody up to? So that's one of the things I'd like for people to discuss. Please help me by talking about that a little more. Use your own opinions with it. But these are one of the things that I'd like to kind of get cleared up in the community. Another thing that we need to talk about and dispel is this idea that we only give with our hearts, because we also need to be giving with our head. It's interesting that when you give away something that people could earn from themselves, it turns out to be the kindest way to destroy people. Let me explain what I mean by talking a little bit about Haiti. So most everybody knows what's happened in Haiti over the last 6 years, some devastating natural disasters, most recently an earthquake. And they've struggled in ways that I can't even imagine. And people have helped. They've reached out to them. They've talked to them. They've sent what they can. So millions of pounds of food and millions of pounds of clothing and millions of shoes have gone to this community. And it's all incredibly heartfelt and very well intended. But what happens when you drop that type of charity on a community, not just for weeks in response to a natural disaster, but for months, years, and in some places, generations? What happens is the butcher, the shop owner, the baker, the carpenter, they're all out of business. Why do you need to purchase clothing? Why do you need to go get food when it's being handed out in droves? And if you ask people from Haiti, and I have, what do you really need in this community? They'll always say the same thing, which is jobs. And so we have to start thinking a little bit more with our head than with our heart. And the distinction here is the reason we do this is because giving this way is easier. But my parents taught me that the easy thing and the right thing are almost never the same. And that's something we need to remember in our giving and our support of the community as well. See, there's consequences to giving this way. When you give somebody something once, it's appreciated. If you give it to them twice, you start to build a little bit of an expectation. You give to them 3 times, you're starting to engender expectation. 4 times, and you're starting to get into entitlement. And 5 times, now it's dependency. And we do this over and over again expecting different results, and it's simply not going to happen. You see, the real competition in my organization is not for donors or for volunteers, although we need plenty of them. It's for the competition amongst the families that we serve. How am I supposed to teach a man to fish when the lake is polluted with so many handouts that they can just go around the corner of the church and get what they need? But there are so many thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, that there are plenty of opportunities for us to use our heads in this giving. I encourage you to not just give support to organizations that kind of give a nod to sustainable charity. I encourage you to demand it. Far be it for me to speak ill of the efforts of anyone else. But this is a legitimate issue in our community and communities around the world. We need to start thinking with our heads, giving with our heads, not just our hearts. You might ask, well, is this guy so self-righteous that he might express that his way is the right way to do this? And I'm going to tell you, yes. because we're doing it the hard way, and it is hard. I'm looking at my staff in the back of the room. They're nodding heads. It is hard work. But I know it's the right way because it's not the easy way. I know what we're doing is the right way to do this. And we're getting really good at it. Really good at it. This past year, we saw 203,000 visitors to our little complex on Michigan Street. We are now recognized as the busiest social service agency in the state of Florida. Now, that's a cool statistic, but it really boils down to how many people are you helping? And I want to share a little bit of that with you. Just this past year, we enrolled 7,665 new member families to our program. 7,000. And we had now 23,000 individual unique members, which means about 75,000 individual people through their families that are participating in our program. If you took everybody in the community, it's about 1.1 million people that qualify as working poor in our community. Our organization, our little operation on Michigan Street, is now serving 7% of that community. That's a measurable percentage of the working poor in our community. And it may not sound like a lot, but that's a big deal. So we are helping people save money with their groceries. We actually this past year estimated about $3.6 million in savings. We assessed people properly 2,069 times through our clinic in crisis situations. Our medical clinic had 2,168 people visit it. Just since January of this year, we've had 428 people visit our domestic abuse drop-in center. That's men and women. And our medical clinic, which is run by the Health Care Center for the Homeless, and Harbor House, which runs our domestic abuse program, are incredibly wonderful partners. And they're only 2 of 27 that we operate. Some of them are on the banner over here. We have 20,000 people this past year that came out and visited just for a computer to check email, to visit with family, to connect with family, to write resumes, to apply for jobs. And we're happy to provide that service. But the big numbers are not as important as the ones you can count on your hands. What I'm really proud of are the things that we're starting to do now. We're graduating people with GEDs off of our campus, and you've never seen anything more exciting than a 59-year-old man weeping because he just got his high school equivalency degree. I encourage you to come out and see it. We do little graduations, and I encourage you to come out. We've had 35 people that we've enrolled this year in Orange Technical College programs like HVAC maintenance or graphic design or certified nursing, and this is the wave of the future. We talk about college debt. Now the conversation really needs to flow to job certifications. And you have another 4 or 5 hours, I'll tell you about that. We also launched our Passport to Prosperity program, which is really just an evolution of programs we've been doing for years and years. But now what happens is people can earn points by attending classes. They can earn points by volunteering. They can earn points by meeting goals on the plan that they set up with their case manager. And they can use those points to get bus passes or food in our grocery or tuition assistance. And it's a great program. We now have over 200 people enrolled in that program. And you may have noticed that we changed our name this year. And that was a big deal as well. But we did it because we wanted to better reflect the broadening scope of our work in the community. We are against poverty, and we are united. There's a lot of people, a lot of organizations that are involved, and we wanted to express that. And the idea of our primary activity being offering a hand up fits so well with the new name. We don't use the term poverty on our campus because people living in poverty, especially people living in poverty, value dignity. So we refer to ourselves on the campus at Michigan Street as Up Orlando. But our most ambitious project this year has been the STEP program, the Success Training and Employment Program. And one of our students who's graduated, Daniel, is going to come up and tell you about it in just a minute. But I want to tell you that it's a small number, but I'm so excited to share with you these individual stories. We've had people graduating from this program. So far this year, 16 people graduated through the program. It's an incredibly difficult thing to commit to and graduate from. But I'm excited to tell you about Sandra. Sandra, who came from Colombia with a pharmacy background but didn't translate into the United States. She was out of opportunities, came and enrolled in our STEP program, and now she's a full-time teacher at Orange County Public Schools. Or I'm excited to tell you about Robert, whose mistakes earlier in his life have pretty much eliminated any possibility of a job in the future. So he went through the STEP program because he still has to support a family. And now he's started his own auto detailing business and is so excited about what the future holds for him. And I'm excited, if you have time for me, to tell you about Paul. Paul, who on his 60 years on this planet Earth somehow found a way to not see or touch a computer, has now gone through our STEP program and is navigating the internet in a way that is astounding, finding new opportunities in the construction industry, looking at jobs where he can float around and move around the country. And it's amazing to see this excitement in people, and I want to share that with you. We're not only lifting people out of poverty, we're lifting them to self-sufficiency. 8 people so far this year, 5 of them veterans, are actually now above 200% of the U.S. poverty through the work they've done on our campus. Not the work we've done, the work they've done on our campus. And that means they're no longer qualified for government assistance. It's hard work, and we're going to do more and more and more and get better and better at this. Our students learn from one another that the way to engender dignity into people's lives is to make them emotionally stable and financially independent. For too many generations, we've shrugged our shoulders and been complacent that the poor will always be with us. But we live in a world where it is genuinely possible to move the needle on poverty so that we can significantly shift the standard of living for our grandchildren in our lifetime. We can do it. You just have to decide that it's possible. I want you to join us. That's what today is about. I want you to unite with us. Please unite with me in the fight against poverty. Thank you. We're going to try something that may blow up on our faces, but I wanted to share the experience of the STEP program with you. And so the only thing we could really think to do was to share with you what we do is called morning motivation. Now it's kind of afternoon motivation here. But for morning motivation, we have a group of people that has to start off the day by sharing a lot of very emotional things. We go through some pretty in-depth stuff that you know, when you're waking up in the morning, it's hard to get up and talk about feelings at 9 a.m. So we start off with this morning motivation, and we do a little call and response. And it's going to be up on the screen here for a second. Daniel's going to introduce himself, and you're going to repeat the words in red as loud as you can with as much applause as you can. Otherwise, we're going to do it a couple times. So, ready, Daniel?
I am ready, Eric.
All right. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning. Well, good afternoon. My name is Daniel.
Morning, Daniel. So then normally Daniel would share about his thoughts on the theme for the day. He's going to actually share a little bit more than that today. And at the end of that sharing, we get up and we try to motivate each other. So I need you to kind of loosen up, because at the end of his talk, I'm going to be asking you to do some things that may not be so comfortable for you. So please help me introduce again Daniel Mayfield.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your kind applause, and thank you for attending this luncheon. I'd just like to give you a little bit about my story. From October 1998 until February of this year, I lived as a homeless man here in Orlando. My daily routine consisted of awakening wherever I passed out at the night before, rummaging through trash cans and dumpsters for my meals, enduring the constant harassment of the local authorities, and imbibing in copious amounts of alcohol and illicit drugs until the combined weights of intoxication and exhaustion would force me into unconsciousness. During my years on the streets, I was inundated by feelings of hopelessness, fear, anger, shame, and self-loathing. But in this daily deluge of negative emotions, perhaps the one that prevailed above all others was loneliness. Without any family, friends, or any support system, I felt utterly and profoundly alone. Because I believed that no one truly cared for me, I couldn't care for myself. I fought to escape these intense feelings of isolation to no avail, and knew that eventually I would die on the streets. This was the burden that weighed on my heart for almost 20 years of my life. All of this changed when I met an amazing woman named Jonalyn Williamson. Hey, sweetie. Like me, she had been trapped by the streets, and she had endured hardships that would have robbed any lesser person of the capacity to love. But upon meeting me, she saw something in me that transcended my present circumstances. Just give me a second, guys, I'm sorry. She saw something in me that transcended my present circumstances. And because of the fact that she saw value in me, she became a catalyst for a wellspring of confidence and hope within me. I was determined to improve myself, but I had arrived at a crux simply because I didn't have anything. How could I elevate myself from the depths of homelessness when I had absolutely nothing? I didn't have any friends or family to turn to. I didn't have any marketable skills because I had squandered the years in substance abuse and incarceration. All I had as far as material possessions were the clothes on my back and the knapsack, and the meager contents of my knapsack. I was clearly unprepared to undertake the task that was before me. But before my hopes were thwarted, fortune smiled on me in the form of Joel Miller, an outreach specialist for the Hope team. Now, I had known Joel for years, and for years he had encouraged me to take the steps necessary to change my life, but all of his urgings fell on deaf ears. Throughout the time that I had known Joel, I had thoroughly and consistently sabotaged myself and did the best I could to undermine my own success. But thanks to my newfound confidence in the love of a very special woman, I finally managed to get to a point to where I could be more receptive to what Joel had to offer. Joel and his fellow outreach specialist, Brad Seltzer, also of the Hope team, helped me and John obtain the documentation that we needed in order to prove eligibility for enrollment to the permanent supportive housing program, a new program under the supervision of the Healthcare Center for the Homeless that, under the supervision of the Healthcare Center for the Homeless that, wow, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just, I got a lot to say. Right. Besides permanent housing, the program offers case management, health care, and peer support for all clients affiliated with it. Our case manager, Deanna Sanchez, along with peer specialists Albert Colbert and Sharday Robinson, worked tirelessly to not only obtain housing for me and Jana, but also to inform us of opportunities that would enrich our lives. They understood that for the chronically homeless, simply the lack of safe, adequate housing is just one concern amongst many. In order to successfully rehabilitate their clients, there are physiological and psychological issues that simply cannot be ignored. It was their formidable task to aid me and Jana in our rehabilitation. It was this imperative that led our case manager to introduce me and Jana to the Success Training Employment Program, or STEP program, which is sponsored by United Against Poverty. Now, the STEP program is focused on teaching its students employability skills and allows them the opportunity to obtain certification in skills relevant to their chosen careers, as well as giving them the ability to obtain real work experience through internships with their many partners. Under the guidance, thanks, Joel, I appreciate that. Under the guidance of Carla Cox and Director Eric Gray, we managed to graduate from this program along with our classmates, Raina, Valerie, Paul, Richard, Herschel, and Maria. Oh man, we're getting there. But the STEP program is just one facet of United Against Poverty's efforts to empower individuals and families to achieve financial independence. Their marketplace and grocery allow members to obtain household necessities fresh produce, and other nourishing foodstuffs for a remarkably low handling fee. Their life enrichment classes, which focus on health, budgeting, tactics to improve employability, and emotional intelligence, allow a diverse range of clients to obtain the tools they need to become well-adjusted individuals who can positively contribute to their communities. Their partnership with the Department of Children and Families allows clients to gain access to computers which can be used to apply for much-needed benefits and to successfully obtain gainful employment. United Against Poverty is poised to positively impact communities ravaged by destitution. But for me, the greatest gift imparted to me by United Against Poverty is the knowledge that I am no longer alone. I am now part of a loving family who's dedicated to eradicating poverty in our communities and empowering people to be able to become parts of these thriving, robust communities and be able to comport themselves with dignity. Thank you, guys. Eric?
So, I told you didn't have to memorize that speech. That was amazing. Now you're making me look bad. All right, so after we share, and usually it's about 15 seconds or so in our program at STEP, we would then get up and try to motivate everybody. We might do some stretching, we might try to get everybody to say some quotes, but mostly what we like to do is sing. And so I'm going to get up here with Daniel and do something that I'm guessing none of the rest of you would be willing to do, and that's get up here and sing in front of you, but you're gonna have to do it with me. So we're gonna have you say what's on the screen in just a little bit, really loud, stand up and sing along with us as best you can in your loudest voice, otherwise I'm gonna feel really embarrassed up here. So Daniel's all finished, so now guys, what do we say? Say it,
Sing it, shout it, lift me up.
All right, here we go. Sometimes in our lives, we all have faith. We all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Everybody lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm going to need somebody to lean on. Very nice, very nice. Nice job. All right.